Hey everyone, I hope you are all well and welcome back. I am again going to be looking at experimental filmmaking. A little bit different this time because this is the day one of a 6-week discussion around experimental filmmaking. So I'm going to put out a video once a week on Sunday, hopefully, that's the goal. And then through the week, feel free to comment and create a bigger discussion around the subject of experimental filmmaking. I've talked about this before, then you'll know how I think about experimental filmmaking as a way to work against mainstream cinema, or the fact that story isn't the key element of filmmaking in this genre. It is, I guess, like watching art. One question you could ask is, what can film as a medium do that any other art form can't? When we look at film that is purely for narrative, there are already other forms of art like novels that can work in a storytelling function. But film can actually do a lot of things other than tell stories. A good way to start is to think that filmmaking, or the parts of film, the parts that we use, sound, time, image, are all materials rather than elements to be put together for a story. So if you're thinking about materials, you can think about it as paints or clay or other types of materials for other forms of artwork. So what we are basically using is materials to make something that inspires our perception rather than engages in a narrative. Try to think of when you're seeing film or experimental film, for the first time, as an encounter rather than an interpretation. So let your senses take it in before you try and interpret it. That allows for a bigger expansion of abstraction. Okay, I'm not going to go too heavily into the past or the canon of filmmakers and how experimental film started and the different periods of experimental film and where we are at now and why. I think that's a whole nother video series, and I can't cover that all in 6 weeks. We're really starting with thinking about, I should say, experimental film as materials and what to do with those materials to make something other than the established practice of storytelling. So let's look at these materials. For example, let's take time and its similarity to clay. So with clay, you can physically play with the clay. You can mold it and shape it into something that is a form or a structure or architectural or organic shaped. With time, you can actually mold and shape that as well. You can repeat, you can bring back, you can motif. It is something that you can mold rather than think of it in a purely linear or a structured way to tell a narrative. So you could use temporal stacks, so you could repeat things, or maybe repeat things slightly differently each time they're repeated. You could stop the movement of something before it should be stopped in our linear way of thinking about film. So the brain has to do the work to fill in some gaps. You could also hold on shots so they become very uncomfortable, and we can see the texture of the time, we can see the texture of what we're looking at. Now let's think of the frame as a canvas instead of a moving image frame that sort of succinctly tells a story. Think about how a canvas works for an artist. You can superimpose, you can use layers, just like an acrylic paint. You can water it down, you can cover parts of the paint up, you can add some collage onto the canvas, you can add another frame on of something moving, you can use effects and dilute that layer of that frame. You can use masks, you can use matte colours underneath or in front of different parts of the other frames that are already there in the layers. You don't have to use the 180 rule. You can break all the rules of the frame. You can have people looking that way and then someone talking that way. You're expecting to have someone talking that way, but maybe have them talking that way as well. So you're moving everything around, you're colouring the frame in different ways, you're adding layers and depths and styles and textures. Also, I've seen, and this is very common, the glitch kind of film where you're using glitchy parts of the digital making. So we're seeing parts of the technology behind what we're working with. And if you are using actual film, like 16mm, you can scratch it. You can do the same type of thing as the digital breaking down. You can break down film, of course. Also, you can think of music as a type of material. You can loop the music. You can add beats and sort of like heartbeats or pulses and maybe mix up the pulses, create different layers, things that aren't succinct. You can have dialogue, see someone talking but hear the talking a lot later. You can really play around with that texture, that overlay of music and sound, not just music, obviously, sound. I should have said that first. And talking about sound even a little bit more, we often get the ambience of a room. Maybe I can hear, as I say that, I can hear a siren. So that's the ambience of my room right now. But yeah, you can put in ambience of rooms that don't logically fit with the room that you might be filming in or a location. So you can really play around with the materials that make up the filmmaking. Think of them in that way rather than sort of structural elements. One of the 9 chapters I made for At the Horizon, which is that all the chapters are in this channel, is on this channel. One chapter is just sound. So I wanted the audience to listen to the soundscape and the voiceover and kind of create their own images. So I'll just put in a little bit of that now here.
From another room, I hear her get ready. She walks across the room, slowly, then back again, in heels. There is a pause. Then steps and a door opens. Steps are heard going into another room. Then a door closes. Water runs from a faucet. This doesn't last.
You can really play with sound as a material. I think it's very important to think about sound going into making a film of any kind. Sound can often be left to the post-production or the end of the making, but I definitely don't think that should happen. I think sound should be at the very beginning of the creative process, because sound is such a huge part of how we actually see. And I think it's often not used as well as it could be. Maybe a little challenge if you want to do something over the week is to do some filming. I'll give you some prompts. So prompt 1, shoot an everyday occurrence upside down. Shoot it from different angles, different perspectives, but everything is upside down. Don't turn it around in post. Actually shoot it upside down with your camera. Prompt 2, tell a feeling with objects. So you can use 3 objects, but you have to create a feeling of some type with those objects and use sound to enhance that feeling. Prompt 3, repeat a shot 5 times but each repetition has to be slightly different, either in the movement of the camera or what we see in front of the camera. If you do use those prompts over the week, please tell me how it went below, which will start a really good discussion for the next 6 weeks as well. Yeah, so I think that's everything I want to say. I will come back again next week, carry on this conversation, have a few prompts for the following week if you want to, start that experimenting creative journey, and then we can start discussing more things in depth about your own experience. I'd actually love to hear what your favourite experimental film is, or what the most unusual film you've ever watched, and why you think so. That would be really cool, because maybe I could be able to find it and watch it, and we would be able to have a bit of a dialogue around that as well. So I'm looking forward to this next 6 weeks. I think it's going to be a really good way to, discuss experimental film together and get stronger in our making creatively, think outside the box. And even if you are very intense on your linear storytelling, I still think all the tools of experimental filmmaking can actually enhance your storytelling ability as well. So this is for everyone. I will see you next week for the next one. Bye.